For years, I looked up to creators who made it and called it an effortless attempt. All they said was just grind. Show up every day and things will eventually work out. But I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's kind of no different to the lie of the American dream. The reason I say this is because it is both true but also a lie. I think if anyone calls it effortless, it is a lie. I think if anyone says that it's easy, that's very relative. And this dream that was basically sold to us by a lot of these bigger creators are often very outdated methods. Here's what some of the things that at least I remember when starting out as a very small creator on my faceless channels. I heard a lot of just be consistent or just figure out what your passion is and follow your passion and eventually something will work out. Just ignore the views and eventually the money will come later. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, a lot of these things are often times a lot of things that YouTubers follow, myself included. I definitely believed in a lot of these, especially when I was a smaller creator. I worked for free. I pulled a bunch of all-nighters, sometimes a very unhealthy amount during high school, ran into tons of burnout, and I thought it was basically just my fault when things didn't work out. They essentially made it seem like hard work would guarantee results, but they left out everything else that kind of mattered, because there is a lot more to it than just hard work. A good example of this would be what I like to call the music industry. Even if you're not interested in it, the concept of the music industry is basically the artist, whether it's a singer or a rapper, it doesn't really matter. You can make the best song in the world. But that's not your only job, right? And even if it is your only job, even if you hire out other people to do it for you, that's fine. But the point is, that's not the only part of the work. So if someone just tells you to make songs, that's not all. You have to figure out a way to distribute it. You have to find out how to market it. And you have to figure out all these other things that often a lot of people don't really like to dive into. And instead they give you very generalized advice. And if that's all you hear, you're kind of cooked. So the harsh reality that I had to learn the hard way was that there are other factors that play into it. There is a luck factor, but your goal is to put yourself in the way of luck. This is something that really didn't click in my head until literally like 2 years ago. That I didn't really put luck into the factor because I thought that wasn't a very tangible thing. But no, it is. You just keep doing the work and putting yourself out there until luck basically rams into you. That's the goal, but it's not going to ram into you if you don't put in the work. So part of it is correct. Hard work did lead me to that point. But other things that also matter are your niche, timing, retention, marketing, which is the titles, the metadata, the tags, and all sorts of things like that. And most importantly, they just weren't telling the whole picture because it didn't really serve them. So them telling you the exact details on how to do this really doesn't provide them any value. Neither will the majority of people really take that information and act on it. So there's no real point of doing so. They didn't show the money that they spent on things like editors, thumbnails, even promotions, or how they got there via their connections. Some of these things are very hard to copy, such as the connections portion of it. But these are the years that they've struggled in silence, thinking like, oh man, do I even do this? Like, shouldn't I just stick with the normal 9 to 5 path? They didn't ever talk about this before going viral. And now that they're viral, all they give you is the information that they think they used to get to where they are now. Another thing that I want to talk about, especially something I've noticed that a lot of creators fall into, is taking advice from the creators that they love watching. So this is my hot take regarding it, but if you're listening to a very, very big content creator, this is 1 million to 2 million subscribers plus, if you're listening to their advice, it's not horrible, but keep in mind, when they were growing as a creator, they didn't grow up at this creator economy. They grew up in a previous creator economy and situation and scenario and just habitat, right? which means their methods may or may not have been patched. And if not patched, the amount of effort it takes to get the results that they got is a lot harder. So that's actually something that I want to mention, because some people like to call it saturation. You can call it whatever you want, but basically at the beginning of a niche or a beginning of anything, it's very easy to post something if there's an audience, because if there's an audience, they'll watch anything. See what I'm saying? So it's usually the first person that ever does it that gets the maximum amount of viewership. Then comes the second, the third, the fourth channel, and then it kind of hinders down in terms of audience until there's like 1,000 channels in that niche, all making content, all struggling to basically take viewership from that topic. And all of a sudden, it's very, very slim. So if you want to compete with all these channels, you have to make something like super viral. That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you here. So even if you did copy their method to a T, for you to get to that super viral level that they got with ease, it is very, very much harder. But I see this happen a lot of times. A lot of people talk about these bigger creators that they look up to, whether it's someone in OTV, whether it's someone in AMP, it doesn't really matter who it is. Because another thing that I want you to keep in mind is there's two types of content that at least I've kind of put into categories. One is growth content, and two is sustaining content. Or that could be a better word, maybe like retaining content. So the growth content is meant to be targeting new people. And sustaining or retaining content is meant to sustain the growth that you already have. So a way you can detect this, at least on a platform such as YouTube, is your returning viewers, right? So content for returning viewers is usually very hyper focused on what they want, while growth topics could be viral trends that you mix with your niche, or just like a viral format that you want to slap onto your niche. And an example of this is the 100 Days niche. It started off with gaming, but then it went off to other things. There was this one video that I saw on my recommended, which was a before and after of someone that literally revived an ecosystem or a habitat, and it was in the 100 Days format. A 100 Days format started off in gaming. They took that format, put it onto their niche, and all of a sudden they have a viral video for growth. So there's all these new viewers that might have watched 100 Days and never really watched, plant videos. All of a sudden there's like a mixture of the audience and all these new faces that see it. But then a sustaining or retaining video could maybe be a very specific non-trendy video about plants or ecosystems, like methods of reviving an ecosystem. This would not really interest 100 Days viewership, right? And so all of a sudden, now you're niching down and making videos for that niche. So a way that I like to see, or not like to see, but I notice that a lot of these big creators make content, like let's say they're a personality channel and their videos are about their personality. All of a sudden you can't really compete with that niche, right? Because they're just trying to retain viewers. So if someone does a tier list, an A to F tier list, that is either banking on one, their personality, or two, they're just retaining their viewership that they already have. If you don't know the creator, why the hell would you care about their tier list? If you don't know the influencer, why the hell would you care about their tier list? You get what I'm saying? And so all of a sudden, why are we following creators that are doing like maybe 60% or 80% of this retaining content when you're at your growth phase, right? Because you're not trying to retain your 12 viewers. You're trying to grow to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million viewers. And so that's a big, big issue that I see a lot of YouTubers kind of facing without even realizing it, just because of who they look up to. So kind of reeling it back into the topic of the video, which is that, I was basically lied to by every YouTuber that I looked up to. They never really talk about burnout. And if they do, it's usually when they quit. These are a YouTuber's lowest point, so I don't blame them for not talking about it, but I feel like more people should be open about this. The uploading and watching the views drop, the losing sleep over the analytics going bad, or just wondering if any of their videos will ever reach their peak again. I think that's probably one of the hardest things you can do as a creator, is become a creator, make it successful, and then have to do it all over again from zero, from ground zero. That is one of the toughest things I've ever had to do in my entire content journey. So If I had to do it all over again, I would rebuild from the truth. I would stop blindly trusting creators who already had made it or are focusing on retaining their viewership and just find other creators more my size breaking through into the algorithm. I would also start making my own connections through just meeting creators just like me. Hopefully it snowballs into bigger and better creators. And I would actually start testing via my own analytics and via my own audience, right? Because analytics is just a reword of audience. And basically, I would start chasing things that could give me leverage as opposed to just chasing without an aim. So just actually learning the SEO, hooks, data, and just like figuring out what sort of niche that I can tap into. I stopped trying to copy their journey and just started to figure out how to become a better version of my own, right? Because the only thing I'm competing with is just the older version of me from yesterday. And so if I just keep taking this step forward, I'll eventually reach something. But there are these other steps to it. I just think you should work a little smarter because it is a very work smart situation that you're playing in. You shouldn't hope for luck. You should find your own luck, curate your own version of success. And everyone's journey is messy. It is not perfect, and it will never be perfect. And most people are genuinely afraid to show that, especially if they're an influencer or creator. So, I was lied to, but that lie taught me what was being hidden, which is the real struggles of being a creator. But also, it is basically the way out for me. And the only way out for me was through finding out what else there was beyond that outer shell. So, genuinely, if you have to take anything away from this video, is be careful of who you do look up to and be careful of who you kind of copy. Because I think it's just a lot better to look at people that are playing today's game than people that played the game 5 years ago and are still big now. So if this helped you in any shape or form, consider subscribing and honestly consider joining the Discord. I have a bunch of free resources for any YouTubers that are interested in basically starting their own thing. It's just a bunch of information and you could get to talk to me on there. But yeah, that's all. Subscribe if this was cool, interesting. Peace.